1, 2, 1, 2, punch. It's hard being a newcomer in the boxing world. Getting beaten up by other boxers isn't easy. Being scolded by your coach whenever you lose a match is a hard pill to swallow. The hardest thing, though, is constantly letting your family down to the point that they won't even acknowledge you or tune into your matches. After losing so many matches, it does things to your brain, kind of breaks you down, really. But I was determined. I'll be a great boxer, the best boxer, a champion boxer. Sweat trickled down my forehead as I faced the reflection of myself in the mirror and shadow boxed. I was shuffling to the left and swinging to the right, assaulting the air in front of me. I had an important match ahead of me today, my final match to be precise. His name was Edward Cartagino, a famous European boxer, who I challenged in an attempt to just fly to the top of the food chain. He was about 5'10", muscular, had brown wavy hair, and he was fast. By fast, I mean, he would throw a punch and you wouldn't even realize what had happened to you until you got up off the floor, disoriented. I can take him and beat him. I'll do everything I can to make it to the top. Everything, I proclaimed to my reflection. I put on my yellow and black boxing gloves and laced on my jet black boxing shoes. Edward entered the locker room while I was gearing up. He stopped and chuckled. He walked straight up to me and shoved me up against the lockers. "Listen here, rookie. There's no way you can beat me. I only accepted your challenge to make a drooling fool out of you. I'm gonna break you down and make you quit being a boxer because sissies don't belong here." He laughed and strolled out of the locker room with such relaxation because he didn't view me as a threat. His words cut into my brain and were all I thought of from now until the match was over. I am a threat. I shadowboxed a few more times to warm up, then left the locker room area to make my grand entrance. As I made my way to the ring and made my pre-match preparations, the show lights came on and the bell finally rang. There I was at my corner, squaring up to Edward, gloves held high, ready to block any of his lightning-fast strikes. He quickly jetted towards me and without even giving me a chance to react, he struck a blow to the left side of my ribs. The shock crippled me as I heard my own bones crack inside of me. As I fell, he struck a blow to my face. My head whiplashed backwards with such force that discs C8 and C7, those had been dislocated in the past, which is why I knew their names, near my spine were moved out of place. I fell onto the floor, crippled by the early blow. This can't be happening to me. I am a threat. Before I finished uttering the words, he quickly bolted over me and swung downwards. He punched me straight on my chest, over my heart. I crashed onto the floor, with my heart unbeating due to the impact of that punch. I heard the ringing of the bell, signaling that the match was over. Flashes of light surrounded me and I heard the steps of his victory. I was asked if I was alright. I didn't speak. They shook me around. I didn't move. They looked into my eyes. I didn't blink. They assumed I was unconscious, not realizing that Edward had snatched out of my only hopes and dreams, my life. I was lifted up and brought to the locker room. No attention was brought to my slightly loose head dangling from their arms. They placed me over the locker room benches. My skin was starting to grow pale white, and the parts of my body that were struck by his hits were now black and blue. A trickle of blood slipped down the side of my mouth, hitting the floor and eventually gathering up into a puddle. 2 hours passed and I was still in the locker room, lifeless. Nobody knew I was in here. In fact, everybody had left. They completely forgot about me, dead, in the locker room. I was alone until Edward walked in to grab his extra boxing gloves. Still in the locker room hung over his lustrous metallic locker. He stumbled across my body and he chuckled just like he did before the match. He lifted me up, and I heard the opening doors as I was being brought somewhere. What was he gonna do to me? Hadn't he done enough? Cold air brushed against my body, and then I was surrounded by pizza boxes, booze, tissues, and plastic bags. I was thrown into a dumpster. Although I was lifeless, I was furious, absolutely furious. I was furious that I'd lost to him, furious that he didn't respect me, furious that he desecrated my body. As I lay in the dumpster, he leaned in and whispered into my pale white ear, "I broke you and you'll never return to boxing. Sissies don't belong here." As he walked away, he heard the sound of trash bags being thrown against the red brick walls. He turned around to see my pale white, black, and blue body jut straight up out of the dumpster. I violently snapped the moved vertebrae into place. The snap and pop caused Edward to cringe as I relocated my own dislocated head into place. I lifted my head up high, looked him straight in the face and grinned. I lifted my boxing gloves in front of my face and took 2 steps before jetting towards Edward. I was faster than him, stronger than him, and my moves were silent. He didn't realize what had happened until all he saw was my cold and dirty gloves strike his face. Then nothing. I am a threat. Edward was never heard of again and was presumed dead. Investigation was put to an end after 2 months of searching for his body. As for me, I was never looked for. My body was never found as no one seemed to remember me. The arena was closed off after constant reports of boxers missing after matches. For those boxers, after their hard-won matches, all they heard was a sepulchral voice whispering, "I am a threat." I'm 33 years old this year, and this happened nearly 30 years ago when I was still at nursery school. Nursery schools in those days were often run by Buddhist shrines, and mine was no exception. I remember there was a channel house in the cemetery right next to the nursery building. One late afternoon, I was playing in the nursery playground. I was the only one playing outside. I think there are still a lot of children staying behind, but somehow I was playing alone. I saw a child standing on top of the climbing frame. It was a boy. The boy wore short trousers and a jacket with gold buttons. He was barefoot. He had closely cropped hair and looked a few years older than me. He stood still, staring down at me. I don't remember feeling scared or surprised, but I remember being overcome by a sudden, inexplicable loneliness. Without a word, the boy got down from the climbing frame and started walking past the charnel house and towards the cemetery. I followed him from behind. I didn't see the cemetery as a scary place because, being next to the nursery, it was a part of the everyday scenery. We sometimes even played hide and seek in there. I'm sure I had my eyes fixed on the boy's back all the time, but somehow, I can no longer recall what happened next, no matter how hard I try to search my memory. The only vivid image I still retain is about a small grave overgrown with moss. A massive tree, such as the ones often seen in old cemeteries, towered over me, shutting off the dying sun rays and making the place appear darker than usual. I think I was out there only for 1 or 2 minutes, but it felt like I was there for a very long time. Sometime later, my grandmother came to fetch me home. When I think about it now, it was the first and the last time my grandmother ever came to the nursery to fetch me. For some reason, I felt really relieved the moment I saw my grandmother's face. My grandmother stood there, gazing at the cemetery for some time, her eyes full of sadness. Then she said, "You have nothing to worry about, dear. Granny will take care of it." I remember the intense look she had on her face as she uttered these words. We went home with our hands firmly joined together. On the way, we walked past the sweets shop and I really wanted to go inside, but she chided me by saying, "Not today, not today. We have to go home quickly." It was the evening of the very same day that my grandmother passed away. Strangely, I don't remember clearly the details surrounding her death. I do remember the funeral and how it was busy with all the relatives rushing to our house, but even now I don't remember feeling sad at the time, although my grandmother's death must have caused me a great distress because I was very attached to her. The following year, I entered the elementary school. The school was right across the street from the nursery, but I never went near the nursery anymore. To be more precise, I couldn't go near it because, whenever I thought of the nursery, the image of the little moss-covered grave flashed across my mind, and it disturbed me. When I became a junior high schooler, I got involved in the community work, and it gave me an opportunity to revisit the shrine in the nursery. The cemetery had been going through a renovation and all the ancient gravestones had been removed. The nursery too had a new building. The place looked very different from how I remembered it. The main shrine was also about to get renovated, and our job was to clean it out and take all the old things and rubbish to the outside. The chief priest was sorting out various things that had been brought to the shrine. Among these were many photographic portraits of the deceased. We were told to carry them out as well. All portraits were wrapped up in old yellowish newspapers, but there was one portrait which had come unwrapped. The moment I picked up the exposed portrait and I looked at it, all the blood in my body froze. It was a portrait of the very boy I saw in the nursery. But there was also my grandmother, who was strangling the boy's neck from behind, with such a fierce expression on her face that she did not look like someone of this world. I passed out right there, and when I next came to, I was in hospital. My father and mother were there, and they both looked terror-stricken. I found out later that they asked the Buddhist priest to perform a purification ceremony on the portrait and had it incinerated. According to the story, which my father heard from the priest, the boy was adopted by the landowner who lived around the area during the war. The boy suffered much maltreatment until one day he succumbed to illness and died. My grandmother used to be a housemaid at the said landowner's household when she was young, and she was the only one who treated the boy with affection. The priest told my father that the boy probably appeared to me because he wanted to take me with him. My grandmother was not going to let that happen, and the result was what we saw in the picture. We moved out of the area soon after that, but even after all these years I still find myself musing over the incident from time to time.